comparing and contrasting a little bit two tech stacks. And I want to be clear, it's not going to be a super technical talk, so don't worry about that if you don't feel comfortable with that. The other aspect of it is we're not comparing these two frameworks directly, like saying this one's better or this one's better. They're both equally good, but what we want to kind of bring out in this talk is why we have the transitioning tech stacks and why was it important for the product and what it ended up doing for the product. So I'm going to hand it over to Zarek so he can kind of start us off.
Howdy. All right, so I'm going to start talking about the product itself. So the product is ARC's Consult, and the premise of this is after patients have been in a hospital for a while, they get discharged, and after a hospital discharge, their medications might change. So what Humana does is they'll send out somebody to the home, like a home health nurse, and they will call in to a pharmacist, a Humana pharmacist, and the pharmacist will be sitting at a computer basically building a new medication. So going through all the old medications that somebody has, going through basically everything one by one. The home health nurse is at the home, looking at the whole models, helping to go through all the medications. So the pharmacist is going through adding medication one by one and then saying, okay, maybe you shouldn't be taking this medication because it has this side effect. You know, basically building and kind of recommending new medications, and then from that point on, they'll try to kind of take that list back to the doctor with any recommendations that they might have. So the pharmacist at the end of all this will click a button, generate a big report that says, you know, these are the changes recommended, maybe you should stop taking this because it has a side effect of headaches and you're getting headaches a lot. So it's a pretty important application, and there's, you know, we've got 3 people in real time kind of waiting on this application, depending on it to be formatting to not be messing up. So, you know, the pharmacist spends 45 minutes on the phone building a giant medication list, and all of a sudden, you have issues with your code, and that's a huge problem.
So when we started off on this product, we had a number of different goals. And at that point, it was a little bit of a greenfield project. We were able to kind of determine what type of tech stack we wanted to do. And we were going through a bunch of different either libraries and frameworks, and we came to the conclusion that we wanted to use a tech stack called Polymer for the front end. Some of you all might be familiar with it. Jason McKee did a talk on it last year. And I kind of want to highlight this because no product team just kind of goes willy-nilly into a tech stack. I mean, we're all professionals here. We say, okay, we feel like this is going to be good for a product. And we might not know in the future that it doesn't work out. And here's kind of like what we went through and why we chose Polymer. One of the things that we talked about with the goals is that we had aspirations about reusing components. Components would be like little subsets of code that would allow you to drop in, or at least the hope would be that you could drop it into other websites and it would render out properly and have the actions just be handled. The idea was that we were going to be making potentially a suite of web applications, and this would be kind of the first step in that, in hopes that we could build a suite of web applications quickly and consistently across all of those. Polymer, from that talk with Jason McKee, mentioned how it's trying to push forward this web standard. The thing is right now it's not there, it's still not there. Components are becoming more and more accepted, but it's still not a web standard. The other aspect was we chose Polymer because it was testable. We had an engineering critique where we kind of compared and contrasted a couple of different frameworks that were available at the time. And what we came away with is we really liked how Polymer allowed you to debug its code and debug its tests. It also had a really awesome pre-existing front-end suite of components. So Google had built out these, what they call paper components, and they were very materialized, designed components with nice features. So like they had a material input box, they had material title bar, they had material lists. And that allowed us to kind of get the design set early, and we could hopefully be able to adjust the layouts of the application as necessary. The other aspect is it did have Google support. Right now, believe it or not, YouTube runs on Polymer. So again, Polymer is not necessarily a bad framework or library. I think they go by the library in their case. But as we found out, we'll get into a little bit later, we're not really sure if that's 100% a good thing because they were really the only ones that were supporting it. They did have a couple of polycasts on YouTube that kind of would train you on like, here's certain things that you can do with Polymer. We ended up finding out those were actually kind of old after the fact. But they also had a conference, and we're going to get more on that a little bit later. The last aspect of it, we were working on a product called SmartList Pro, and it was already trying to use Polymer as well. So naturally, we were like, if we want to share components between the two products, using Polymer might be a good option. So we were able to get the product, a working version of it in QA and production. So we went through all the stages. We had quick adoption. Those that were able to jump into it were able to use it pretty quickly and pretty seamlessly. They were already seeing pretty good results in speed, seeing upticks in the number of consults they could do a day, which is one of their measurements of success. So all in all, things were going on the up and up.
Yeah, I would say they were even trying to push more consults in that direction. They were having such good success with it. They were trying to make more and more pharmacists use it.
So the question is if everything's going well, what happened? Bugs happened. I can't say enough how much I felt like this dog on numerous days while working with this, under this tech stack. When I say bugs happen, what I really mean is when we were building out the architecture of Polymer, we were really looking at making it reusable components. And when you're trying to make something reusable, you try and isolate it as much as possible. The problem that we were running into, and we'll get into this just a little bit later, but it's just to highlight one of the major issues we ran into was the communication between those components. So I'm going to turn it over to Zarek. Actually, let's go to the next one. Okay, here's the results. So we had a usable product in production, and we had reusable components. But one of the things we found out was no one was using them. By the time we got into production, any products that had plans of potentially using them were either like dissolved into a completely different product that was going in a completely different direction, or just shut down because the adoption wasn't there, or they determined that the use case just wasn't realistic. Going back to the bugs, we had a hard time. When we had a bug, we didn't have many of them, but when we had them, they were very hard to find. Because of how Polymer communicates back, bubbles up communication between components, it was sometimes hard to find what was affecting what. And that was way harder than we had anticipated. Because of that, we had difficulty in maintaining this product. One of the things that that kind of gets rolled into that is we had not been working with a guest team, and eventually there was going to be an engineering team that was going to take it. They had not been working with us. And we had found that Polymer's resources online were very, very, very limited. Like you go on to Stack Overflow, you're still finding things for Polymer 1.0. In fact, most of the time when you go to Polymer's documentation website, it will default to 1.0, even though 3.0 was coming out in the future. So it was just really, really hard. And I mentioned about the polycasts. They were outdated. They hadn't actually updated. I think they had maybe 1 or 2 videos in the process of building Polymer. And all of this was not clear at the start. And that we just kind of ran into as we built the product.
Yeah, I would say we also looked at, there was a big conference, I think in Europe somewhere, and that what came out of that was that a lot of Polymer 3 was basically going to be breaking a lot of stuff that we had. So anything from Polymer 2 to Polymer 3 looked like it was going to be a nightmare to upgrade. So from our point of view, like maintainability was just not going to be there.
Yeah, and last but not least is the pharmacists were having to redo some complex work because of those hard to find bugs. Again, we got most of those taken care of as they came along, but definitely don't want to be seeing that in any sort of situation that they're having to be pressed for time.
Yeah, I think the previous system they were using Crossline.
Yeah.
It's fire. And that was taking a lot of time for them to do some things, which is why they're moving to this new product. But as bugs were appearing, you don't want to lose a medication list of a patient. So in some cases, when when we were trying to figure out the bugs, they were doing things in Inspire and in RF both at the same time, so they were kind of doubling their work. In the event that something happened and they lost the data on our work, on our product, they would still have it in Inspire. All right, so what did we do from there? We went back to the drawing board. We kind of went back and looked at what do we need for this product, what do we expect, what would help us avoid having all these bugs. So we basically just went through and made a list. We wanted a better way to manage data. That was a big point. Because of the way the components communicated with each other, you know, if you edited a bed list of one component, another component over there might have all these triggers based off of that change, and sometimes that would cause these bugs and cause the data to get corrupted. So we would just be doing all kinds of work. We didn't really need the reusable components since nobody was using them. It wasn't like a big drive for that to be a requirement for our tech stack. And big support. I mean, if you're running into issues or you need to Google something, having a very community-based tech stack is a major bonus. So since Polymer didn't have that, we were looking for something that had a much bigger community. Since we were kind of trying to change everything on the fly and there was already a product out there, we didn't want to just change the tech stack where everything on the UI would have to be totally replaced. So we didn't want people to be learning this new product to get off of Inspire and then all of a sudden have to learn another product after that just because we had to change tech stack. So we wanted to kind of keep the look and feel that we already had. We wanted to keep our testability since we test everything. And since a new team was coming out, we needed something that was easy to learn and easy to kind of spread knowledge with. Since you don't have a big community about that, you're trying to hand it off to somebody else who might need to do some Google searches, and they need to have something to base it off. And future-proof, like we were seeing Polymer, didn't seem like it was going anywhere in the future at the time, so we just needed a good online community. So we sat down with engineers from various products. There were some other products that were using Vue. We looked at a couple other ones too, like Angular, React, things here. So we sat down, had a talk. People that had used both. I think like Jason McKee, I think had used some Vue and some Polymer as well as so we decided that we were going to go to Vue just based on the community that we had. So it had a great state store, which is basically what you need to manage your data between all the components. So rather than having to use Polymer and its buggy data bindings that we were using.
I want to jump in there. Polymer does have Redux as a state store. We had not built it into it originally, so we could have added that, but it would have required us to rework how most of the architecture had already been built. So it would have been a rewrite in and of itself. So I just kind of wanted to mention that Polymer does have a state store. It just isn't as nice or useful in my mind as UX.
Right, since it wasn't maybe going to be supported in the future, it was a reason to rebuild it with that. So Vue also does support reusable components if we need it. It has a massive community. It's a huge library growing, just like React as well. Yeah, there's all kinds of talks and documentation about Vue. So then we found there were a couple different like material frameworks. Material is Google's like UI kind of standard. So Polymer had all that built in since you're all using Google components to have that. There were a couple different ones for Vue, but we ended up landing on Unify, which is kind of the prominent one now, I would say. So we were able to transition and use this library and still keep the same look that we already have on most of the product. And there's another library, Vue Test Utils, and that provides testing support. Those are traditional JavaScript. So most of what you're doing in Vue is just base JavaScript and HTML, and then just kind of separating it out. So it's pretty easy to pick up for any other teams that we're doing it up to as well. And since we were already using it in the deck, other engineers could rely on them to make that conclusions. And the other bonus was, since we had a backend server that was providing all the data, we only really needed to change the front end of the product. And that's what the issue was with. We could still leave the backend, nothing had to change there. We could still communicate, update medications, all that kind of stuff. So the engineers decided But then we had to go back and change the mind of our product managers, our stakeholders.
So part of these extra discussions we had is we actually brought in kind of what we just talked about. We wanted to make sure that they understood going into it why we were pushing for this. It's not just something like, oh, View's really cool, we read a lot about it. We had identified a lot of issues, at least with our original architecture. And we also wanted to kind of revisit the goals. Again, we talked about those reusable components. That was actually a really big deal at the original point. But then as we said, like the other products that might have used to kind of dissolve, it became less so. So then we could really focus in on making this product the best product it could be, as opposed to just being a resource for other web applications. So we went in and we said, okay, here's these bullet points that we're seeing our users feel, and here is the solution that we believe will be a good solution to this. Here's how it's going to check off these boxes, and we showed some proof of concept going into it. It was very easy to kind of pull in. We did a couple of concepts where we just did a simple mitigation list to show how easy it was for us to pull in to make sure we were confident with the tech stack. And that was able to give RPMs the confidence going forward to present that and say, okay, we're going to go this route.
So then part of that is we can decide on a new tech stack, because we can't just all of a sudden, you know, a lot of us didn't know Vue. I didn't know Vue. I think Nate knew Vue. We had Tom and Jake on the product, and I think they both had experience with it. Chris didn't have experience with it. So we decided on a new tech stack, but we also had to learn it and implement it. So luckily we had Tom on our team, and he was pretty familiar with Vue. So we had 4 engineers on that team, so we split up the pairs. So we had one pair kind of working on the bugs of the existing product. So pharmacists that were using it were all of a sudden just kind of walked out. And we had the other pair, was basically Tom and somebody else, and so they would just kind of rotate. So Tom and somebody else would be writing the new Vue app. He would be kind of teaching them Vue, and then they would kind of rotate out. So everybody on the team got to learn Vue and kind of build a new product.
So at the end of that result, it took about 3 months because it actually took a little bit longer than we were expecting because we were supporting Polymer as well. Obviously having 2 pairs of engineers rewrite it, so it moved a lot faster. But we were still able to rewrite the entire front end in less than 3 months. We had huge improvements to our performance. Our users were experiencing much less hiccups, much less bugs. We were able to hand off the product to another team in about a month. So they were able to be ramped up and be completely self-reliant and needed. I believe Joel and Ashok were 2 of the engineers that came in and joined us. We had rolled off 2 of our engineers and brought them on, and they picked it up really, really fast. And the product is still in active development. I believe they had a major release last night as well, and we're still building new features and building it in the direction that the product needs to go. So from our perspective, we were able to not only keep the good progress that was being built by the original version 1, if you will, but we were also able to improve upon that. Something we didn't highlight is we didn't do just a straight one-for-one replacement. We also took this as an opportunity to kind of look at it and say, where can we improve? Where are pain points already? So like some things we added with the Vue rewrite, we added keyboard shortcut bindings. We added a new drop-down menu that was kind of like an omnibar, if you will, for those who are familiar with the Google's top bar, so they could search and add all from the same place. It really improved their speed and able to do consults. But on top of that, also improved the type of care that they were able to give to their members that were on the phone, because they were able to focus more on the suggestions and the insights that they were able to glean and less fighting the software. Sean, do you remember how many they were able to get up to in a day after they had gotten wrecked up on the Vue?
I think it went from around 11 up to 16 in a day.
So we were able to move it up 5 extra, which if you've ever gotten to sit in on one of those calls, they do take some time. We definitely want to give each member the quality time that they need to have those discussions. So we were, I think the results spoke for themselves, and as it's continued to be used, it's good to. Is there any questions?
At what point did you go from trying to fix with an polymer and trying to get all that working to just deciding to sort of go back to the drawing board and say screw everything with polymer anymore?
So the question was, when did we make that decision to move from polymer to view and to just kind of cut off polymer? So that's a great question. So what we ended up doing, and we ended up deciding that we wanted to, we had gotten that first MVP out the door, and we made some decisions of like, they could do a full consult. It was still like they could go from point A to point B and essentially do everything that they had been able to do in Inspire. But there was other new features that we were wanting to add to it. One of those being an omnibar that we talked about. And so at that point is when we said, okay, we're going to still support polymer until we can get view up to the same level of polymer. So that's where we talked about that two engineering pair. So we did have time where there was overlap between the two, but we were able to utilize the other pair that was still on polymer to build out the new features that we had on the back end, which also helped a little bit at speeding up the front end of it. But it really kind of came down to when view made it back to the level that polymer was, then we cut off polymer completely at that point. Does that answer your question?
And I'd say it probably took us maybe about a month or more just kind of sitting on the idea before we actually started trying to push it. Just kind of once the bugs started happening more often, I mean, even if we would fix some, and there'd be some other issues that just kind of kept coming up, and it was just, I think, took us about a month of just kind of building up frustration about it. All right, we need to do this. Any other questions?
It's great to work on new technologies, but at any point of time during the life cycle, you consider the question that is it human certified software, or are you taking a step to certify that software? Like if you select any ornament, do you check whether that is human certified or not? If it is not human certified, are you taking a step to certify the software?
So you're asking, did we take the step to get it Humana certified?
For any component software that we're
Oh, for component Humana software. Okay. So the question was, did we take any steps at getting this component software Humana certified? Okay. So Vue is a framework, and it's more of like a library. So you can pull it in as is. We wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence to make sure that we weren't using things from here that was out of bounds, like we weren't pulling a library from who knows where. But one of the things that was encouraging to us, and while we didn't have to go any sort of certification process, Vue, as we mentioned, had already been being used at Humana. I think the web team's currently been working on some components themselves over in the towers. And we had a number of products currently already in the deck that we're using Vue. So we're very comfortable transitioning to Vue. But I do think that that's always something you should consider, is making sure that the stack that you're using isn't just going to be done for none's sake. You want to actually use it and say it's going to be secure. And I believe that's been true with our use of Vue.
Yeah, and I think that was part of our decision process when we went back up with the engineers and kind of went through the pros and cons of different frameworks to choose. What is supported and what is can be used.
So we went from polymer to there are two different I would say polymer is great. What are the challenges on your backend services for the components of great?
The question was, what challenges did we run into switching from Polymer to Vue, specifically when interacting with our backend?
I would say we really didn't run into any issues. I mean, most of the stuff is just our backend for written REST, so we're just basically side view that we're looking at.
Vue was the main one we had our eye on, but we wanted to check out potentially React. So we had some discussions with some engineers that used React because it was obviously a very popular framework in Angular. We ended up finding out that those were probably a little too, like in the case with Angular, a little too heavy for what we were wanting to do. And with React, you were going to have to run the whole JSX. And again, Vue was one of those that won out in that regard because it was so much easier to just get up and go, learn, especially if you hadn't ever seen it before.
What's the stack you guys want?
So the overall stack, so the question is, what is our tech stack? From top to bottom? Okay. So we were running Vue front end, and then our back end, our API layer, we had a couple of microservices. Those were .NET, and then we had a database layer, a MySQL database layer.
With frameworks, like update, are there like breaking changes that happen that you'll have to take into account? Is that?
The question was, when frameworks update, are there breaking changes? I feel like with Vue, there weren't. I think in Vue Material, the framework that we're using for the front end, the components themselves, like the layering or the UI look and feel. I think that was a little bit buggier at first, just because it was pretty new. It seemed to be the most stable one out there. Another team that was using Vue Material, and that component, or that framework, was pretty buggy, and people were having a lot of issues customizing it, so that's why we ended up going with Vue Material.
All right.
So which team manages this kind of like frequent updates to this project in terms of governance?
Like in terms of governing the framework itself, I was just the team that's developing it and they maintain it themselves. So everything is like a node NPM package. So if they want to, they can change it there. But yeah, I mean, it's a responsibility of the current team to look and see if there's any updates and if they anything needs to be updated, they can update it or work. For the most part, it's just kind of changing the version of your package JSON, updating and running all your tests and making sure everything's still. All right, thank you all very much.